The autumn rain fell like silk threads across Manhattan's Fifth Avenue, painting the city in shades of silver and gold. Damien Cross stood beneath the awning of his family's luxury hotel, the Cross Imperial, checking his Patek Philippe watch. At 32, he was the embodiment of old money elegance. 6 feet 3 inches of tailored perfection, with sharp cheekbones that could cut glass, stormy grey eyes that had graced the cover of Forbes, and dark hair styled with effortless precision. The Cross empire spanned hotels, real estate, and tech investments worth billions, and Damien carried that legacy with the quiet confidence of a man who'd never known want. But money, he'd learned, couldn't buy the one thing he craved: genuine connection. That's when he saw her. Elena Martinez burst through the revolving doors of the adjacent building, her worn canvas bag clutched against her chest as she tried to shield herself from the rain. She wore a simple cream blouse and navy skirt, clothes that had seen better days but were impeccably clean and pressed. Her honey-brown hair, streaked with natural gold highlights, tumbled in damp waves past her shoulders. But it was her face that stopped Damien's breath, doe-like hazel eyes framed by thick lashes, full lips the color of rose petals, and skin that seemed to glow despite the grey weather. She looked up at the sky with such pure dismay that Damien found himself smiling. "Here," he said, appearing beside her with his umbrella extended. "You look like you could use this more than I do." Elena turned, and their eyes met. Time seemed to crystallize around that moment. The rain, the traffic, the city noise all fading into white noise. I can't take your umbrella," she stammered, her voice soft with a slight accent that spoke of her Puerto Rican heritage. "You'll get soaked." "My car is right there." Damien gestured to the sleek black Bentley idling at the curb. "And you look like you have somewhere important to be." "I work at the Children's Hospital," she said, hugging herself against the cold. "The pediatric ward. I'm a volunteer coordinator, and we have an event starting in 20 minutes. Something in her earnestness, the way she prioritized sick children over her own comfort, struck a chord deep in Damien's chest. "Then we definitely can't have you arriving late and drenched," he said, making a decision. "Marcus." He called to his driver. "We are giving this young lady a ride to." He looked at Elena questioningly. "St. Catherine's Children's Hospital," she whispered, eyes wide. "But I really can't impose." "You're not imposing. I'm offering." Damien's smile was warm, transforming his usually serious face into something boyish and irresistible. "I'm Damien, by the way." "Elena," she breathed, and when she placed her small hand in his to shake it, Damien felt a jolt of electricity that had nothing to do with the storm overhead. That car ride changed everything. Over the following weeks, Damien found excuses to visit St. Catherine's. He made donations, modest at first, so as not to overwhelm Elena, and volunteered his time. He read stories to children in hospital beds, his expensive suits replaced with jeans and simple shirts. Elena watched him hold a little girl's hand during a painful procedure, watched him make a terminally ill boy laugh with magic tricks, and her guarded heart began to open. "You're different than I thought," she admitted one evening as they shared street tacos from a vendor outside the hospital, her favorite spot, which had quickly become his too. "Different how?" Damien asked, sauce dripping down his chin in a way that would have horrified his board members but made Elena giggle. "Rich guys like you usually don't," she paused, searching for words. "See people." Damien finished quietly. "You're right. Most don't. But you've made me see everything differently, Elena. The world's more beautiful through your eyes." She blushed, that gorgeous rose color flooding her cheeks. "Damien, I need to be honest with you. I live in a studio apartment in Queens. I take the subway. My entire wardrobe probably costs less than your shoes. I send money back to my mother in San Juan every month. I'm not your world." Damien set down his taco and took both her hands in his. The streetlights cast shadows across his face, making his grey eyes appear almost luminous. "Elena, I've dated women who wore diamonds to breakfast and couture to the gym. They knew wine vintages and society gossip. And I was lonely every single day. He brushed a strand of hair from her face with heartbreaking tenderness. Then I met you, in your second-hand clothes with your beautiful heart and your terrible jokes, and suddenly I understood what I'd been missing. You're not my world, Elena. You're my whole universe. She kissed him then, there on that dirty Manhattan Street corner, and it was the most real thing Damien had ever felt. Their romance blossomed like wildfire. Damien showed Elena his world. Private rooftop dinners, weekends in the Hamptons, Broadway shows from his family's box seats. But his favorite moments were in her world. Lazy Sundays in her tiny apartment making arroz con gandules from her abuela's recipe. Salsa dancing at her favorite club in the Bronx. Morning walks through Flushing Meadows Park. "Marry me," Damien said 3 months after that rainy day. They were back where they'd met, standing beneath the awning of the Cross Imperial as artificial rain fell from the building's fountain. He'd arranged it all. "I know it's fast. I know people will say we are crazy. But Elena, I've never been more certain of anything in my life. You are my home." Elena's eyes filled with tears. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Damien. 1,000 times yes." The wedding was intimate, just close family and friends, at Damien's estate in Connecticut. Elena wore a simple silk gown that cost more than her yearly salary, but she'd insisted on keeping her mother's rosary wrapped around her bouquet of gardenias. She looked like an angel, and when Damien saw her walking down the aisle, tears streamed unashamedly down his face. "I promise to love you, protect you, and cherish you every day of our lives," he vowed, his voice thick with emotion. "You've given me everything, Elena. Everything." Their honeymoon in Santorini was a blur of whitewashed walls, sunset kisses, and nights tangled in Egyptian cotton sheets where Damien worshipped every inch of his bride's skin, learning the geography of her body with devoted attention. Elena had been shy at first, her experience limited, but Damien was a patient and generous lover, and soon she was matching his passion with her own fire. "I love you," she gasped as he moved inside her, their bodies silhouetted against the Aegean moonlight. "Don't be scared," Damien whispered against her lips. "I'll never hurt you. Never." If only he'd known how those words would haunt him. A year into their marriage, Elena's complaints began. "You're working late again." She stood in the doorway of his home office, arms crossed over the silk nightgown he'd bought her. It was midnight, and Damien was still on conference calls with Tokyo. "Baby, I'm sorry. This deal." "There's always a deal, Damien. Always another acquisition, another meeting, another trip." Her voice cracked. "I married you, not your company." Guilt twisted in Damien's chest. She was right. The Cross Empire demanded constant attention, and he'd been pouring himself into an expansion that would double their holdings. But at what cost? "You're right," he said, ending the call despite the protests from the other end. He crossed to her, pulling her into his arms. "I am sorry, mi amor. I've been neglecting you, and that's unforgivable." Elena softened against him, but there was something in her eyes, a distance that hadn't been there before. "I just miss you. Miss us." "Tell you what," Damien said, a plan forming. "I'm going to take a week off. No calls, no meetings. Just us. We'll reconnect, I promise." But even as he made the promise, he was already thinking about the contracts that needed reviewing, the deals that couldn't wait. Elena felt his distraction and pulled away, offering a sad smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Sure, Damien. A week off. I'll believe it when I see it." Over the next few months, the distance grew. Elena threw herself into her work at the hospital, often coming home after Damien had already fallen asleep at his desk. They made love less frequently, and when they did, something was missing, that soul-deep connection that had defined them. Damien hated it but convinced himself it was a rough patch. All marriages had them, right? Then came the wake-up call. He was reviewing quarterly reports when he realized the date, their second anniversary, and he'd scheduled a board meeting right through their dinner reservation. "No," he said aloud, slamming the folder shut. "Enough." He called his assistant, Christian Wolf, a 35-year-old efficiency expert Damien had hired to help Elena manage the growing charitable foundation she'd started. Christian was good-looking in a different way than Damien, blonde where Damien was dark, casual where Damien was formal, always with an easy smile that put people at ease. "Christian, I need you to clear my schedule for the next week," Damien said. "Damien, the Singapore investors. We'll wait. My wife is more important than any deal. I'm going to surprise her at the foundation office and take her to lunch. Actually, clear my afternoon too. We are doing this right." He heard something in Christian's voice when he replied, a hesitation, maybe? But Damien was too excited about surprising Elena to analyze it. "Of course. Whatever you need." Damien drove himself that day, a rare occurrence. He wanted everything to be perfect. He'd arranged for Elena's favorite restaurant to prepare a private lunch, picked up the vintage first edition book of Pablo Neruda's love poems she'd been coveting, and even stopped to buy gardenias like she'd carried on their wedding day. He was 3 blocks from the foundation office when it happened. The delivery truck ran the red light at full speed. Damien saw it in his peripheral vision, a wall of metal bearing down on the driver's side of his Mercedes. He tried to swerve, but there wasn't time. The impact was catastrophic. Metal screamed. Glass exploded. Damien felt his body thrown like a ragdoll despite the seatbelt, his head connecting with something hard. The world spun in a kaleidoscope of pain and sound, then everything went dark. He woke to sirens and voices calling his name from far away. "Mr. Cross. Mr. Cross, can you hear me?" Pain. God, such pain. "Damien." That was Elena's voice, raw with panic. He felt her hands on his face, her tears falling on his skin. "No, no, no. Please, God, no. Damien, stay with me." He tried to speak, to tell her he was okay, but darkness pulled him under again. Cross Memorial Hospital had been built by Damien's grandfather, a state-of-the-art medical facility that served the community but also ensured the Cross family received the finest care. Damien woke there 3 days after the accident, his body a map of pain. "Elena." His voice was a croak. She was there instantly, gripping his hand. She looked terrible, dark circles under her eyes, her hair unwashed, still wearing the clothes she must have been wearing when she got the call. But she'd never looked more beautiful to him. "I'm here, baby. I'm here." She was crying, pressing kisses to his knuckles. "You scared me so much. They said you might not wake up." "Takes more than a truck to kill a Cross," Damien attempted a joke, but his voice was weak. Dr. Harrison Blake, the head of neurology and a family friend, entered with a tablet and a grave expression. Damien had known Harrison since prep school. They'd been roommates at Exeter before Harrison went to Johns Hopkins for medicine. "Damien, you're lucky to be alive," Harrison said. "You sustained severe head trauma, multiple fractures, internal bleeding. We've stabilized you, but we need to run more tests." Over the next week, those tests revealed the extent of the damage. Most of it would heal, Harrison assured them. But there was one problem, Damien's vision. The optic nerve sustained significant trauma, Harrison explained to both of them. "Right now, your vision is severely impaired. It might improve with time, or," he paused, "there's a possibility the damage is permanent." Elena gasped, clutching Damien's hand tighter. But Damien remained calm, a strange peace settling over him. He'd come so close to dying. If the price of life was his sight, he'd pay it gladly. "We'll deal with it," he said firmly. "Together." But Harrison requested a private word with Damien when Elena stepped out to take a call from the foundation. "There's something else," Harrison said quietly. "And I'm telling you this as your friend, not just your doctor. Over the past few days that Elena's been here, I've noticed something concerning." Damien's stomach tightened. "What?" "She and your assistant, Christian. They're close. Very close. The way they speak to each other, body language that suggests familiarity beyond professional bounds." Harrison's expression was pained. "Damien, I hate to even suggest this, but given that your vision will be limited during recovery, I think you should consider testing her loyalty." Anger flared hot in Damien's chest. "You're suggesting my wife is—" "I'm suggesting you protect yourself," Harrison interrupted gently. "Look, I hope I'm completely wrong. I hope Elena is exactly who you think she is. But you're about to be vulnerable in a way you've never been. If there's any possibility that she's not as devoted as she seems, wouldn't you rather know now?" Damien wanted to throw Harrison out, to defend Elena's honor. But a small, insidious voice whispered in his mind, "She's been distant for months. She's complained constantly about your work. Christian is young, attentive, spends every day with her. What are you proposing? Damien heard himself ask. Act blind. Completely blind. Your vision is impaired enough right now that it's believable. Tell her the damage was worse than expected, that you can't see anything. People reveal their true selves when they think no one's watching. Harrison put a hand on Damien's shoulder. Again, I hope I'm wrong. But if I'm right, you need to know. When Elena returned, her face still streaked with tears, Damien made his decision. Baby, sit down. There's something I need to tell you. She sat, her hand finding his immediately. Damien took a breath and delivered the lie that would change everything. The damage to my optic nerves. It's worse than they thought. Elena, im blind. Completely blind. Elena's scream of anguish echoed through the hospital room, and Damien hated himself for the deception even as he watched her through his actually working eyes, searching for any hint that Harrison might be right. He saw only genuine devastation, and he felt like the worst human being alive. The first month was a careful performance. Damien moved through his home, their home, the sprawling penthouse that now felt like a prison, with calculated hesitation, using a cane provided by the hospital, wearing dark glasses that hid his seeing eyes. Elena was perfect. Devoted. She rearranged furniture to make his navigation easier, labeled everything in Braille she learned online, read to him for hours. She helped him dress, guided him through meals, slept curled protectively against him every night. Damien began to relax, feeling foolish for doubting her. Then Christian came to the apartment for a work meeting about the foundation. Damien sat in his study, his seeing eyes hidden behind dark glasses, as Elena and Christian discussed donor relations in the living room. He couldn't see them from his position, but he could hear everything. You're exhausted, Elena, Christian's voice, gentle and concerned. You don't have to do this alone. I'm not alone. I have Damien. A Damien who needs constant care, who can't work, can't help you manage the foundation, can't be the partner you need right now. Silence. It's stretched too long. Christian, that's not fair. Isn't it? Elena, I see how hard this is on you. You've given up everything to be his caretaker. Your work, your freedom, your life. That's not a marriage, that's a prison sentence. He's my husband. I love him. Do you? Or do you love the man he was? Another pause, heavy with implication. You know I care about you. More than just professionally. I think you know that. Christian. Elena's voice was conflicted, and Damien's hands clenched into fists. This isn't. We can't. I'm not asking for anything, Christian said softly. Just think about what you want, Elena. What you deserve. A life. Happiness. Someone who can actually be there for you. When they said goodbye 30 minutes later, Elena kissed Christian's cheek. Damien heard the sound, intimate and lingering. And the seed of doubt Harrison had planted began to grow. The changes started subtly over the following weeks. Elena began coming home later. Foundation emergency, she'd explain, smelling of wine and expensive cologne that wasn't Damien's. She took calls in other rooms, her voice low and careful. She hired more household staff, a full-time nurse named Martha, housekeepers, a chef, all positioned as help for Damien but effectively creating distance between them. Their physical relationship deteriorated. Elena was always too tired or had too much on her mind. When they did make love, it was mechanical, her mind clearly elsewhere. She no longer called out his name. She was silent, almost dutiful. Damien noticed everything through his supposedly blind eyes. But the real evidence came when Elena grew careless. 3 months into his blindness, she stopped locking her laptop. Why would she? Her blind husband couldn't see the screen anyway. One evening, while Elena showered, Damien silently opened her computer. His hand shook as he scrolled through her emails. The first one was from Christian, dated 2 weeks earlier. Can't stop thinking about yesterday. The way you looked in that dress at lunch. The way you smiled at me across the table. Elena, I know this is complicated, but what we have is real. More real than... Damien couldn't finish. His breath came in short gasps, rage and heartbreak warring in his chest. He opened another email. Then another. A digital trail of betrayal emerged. Lunch dates at intimate restaurants, places Damien had never taken her because he'd been too busy working. A weekend trip to Napa Valley labeled as a donor cultivation trip, but with just Elena and Christian registered at a luxury resort. 1 room, 1 bed, dinner reservations for 2 under Christian's name. And texts. God, the texts on her phone when he managed to access it. Christian, missing you already. That conference room at the hotel has amazing memories now. Winky face. Elena, stop. What if someone sees? Christian, let them. I want the world to know you're mine. Elena, it's complicated. He needs me. Christian, you need happiness. You need me. Damien barely made it to the bathroom before he vomited. Over the next few weeks, he continued his surveillance. Every late night, every whispered phone call, every work emergency, he documented it all. Then came the day that Martha, the nurse, pulled him aside. Mr. Cross, I don't know how to say this, she began carefully. But I think you should know. Mrs. Cross has been having a man visit during the day. Your assistant. They. She blushed. They go into the guest bedroom and lock the door. 4 hours. That evening, Damien waited in his study. Through the crack in the door, positioned so Elena thought he couldn't see, he watched Christian arrive. Elena greeted him with a kiss that was anything but professional. Her hand slid into Christian's hair, his grip her waist, pulling her flush against him. I missed you, Elena breathed. It's been 3 hours, Christian laughed, but his hands were already sliding under her shirt. Too long. She kissed him again, deeper. Damien's asleep in his study. We have time. They disappeared into the guest bedroom, and Damien heard the lock click. For 2 hours, he sat in his study, listening to the sounds of his wife's pleasure, the creaking bed, her moans of satisfaction, Christian's name gasped in ecstasy. All the sounds she used to make for him, now given to another man. In his own home. While pretending to care for her blind husband. When they finally emerged, Elena was glowing in a way Damien hadn't seen in months. Christian was buttoning his shirt, his expression satisfied. When are you going to tell him? Christian asked, pulling Elena close. About us. About the baby. Damien's world stopped. Elena then said, soon. I promise. I just need to time it right. With his condition, I can't just spring it on him. He's fragile. Christian's expression darkened. He's been fragile for 5 months, Elena. Meanwhile, you're pregnant with my child, sleeping in his bed, playing devoted wife while sneaking around. This isn't fair to any of us. Not you, not me, and frankly not even him. I know, Elena said, and was there guilt in her voice? Damien couldn't tell anymore. Just a little longer. I'm working with the lawyers to make sure everything's in place. The foundation, the assets, the settlement. I can't walk away with nothing after what I've given up for him. After what she's given up for him. Damien sat in his study, in his own home, listening to his wife plan his destruction while carrying another man's child, and something inside him died. The woman he'd loved more than life itself didn't exist. Maybe she never had. You've given up your happiness, Christian said. But I'm going to change that. We're going to be a family. You, me, and our baby. A real family. They kissed again, and Damien watched through eyes that were supposed to be blind as his wife melted into another man's arms, planning a future that erased him completely. When Christian finally left, Elena came to the study where Damien pretended to sleep, his head on his desk. She touched his shoulder gently. Damien, honey, let's get you to bed. She helped him stand, guided him to their bedroom, helped him undress with tender care. Then she climbed into bed beside him, curled into his side like she had 1,000 times before. I love you, she whispered in the darkness. And Damien, his heart completely destroyed, whispered back, I love you too. The lies we tell in the dark are the ones that hurt the most. The next morning, Damien made a decision. 6 months of surveillance, evidence gathering, and heartbreak was enough. He called his lawyer, Marcus Chen. I need you to do something for me, Damien said quietly. I need you to compile everything, every photo, every text, every hotel receipt, every piece of evidence we have. And I need you to prepare divorce papers. Are you ready to end this? Marcus asked. Damien looked at his reflection in the bathroom mirror. The dark glasses hid his seeing eyes, but they couldn't hide the devastation in his face. He'd lost weight, aged years in months, been broken by the woman he'd trusted with everything. No, he admitted. But I need to see how this ends. I need to know. He trailed off, unable to articulate what he needed to know. How deep does her betrayal go? How far will she take this? At what point will guilt make her stop? One more week, Damien decided. Let me watch for one more week. Then we end this. That week was the longest of Damien's life. He watched Elena move through their home with increasing carelessness. She no longer hid her texts. She took calls from Christian in front of him, her voice warm and intimate. She came home smelling like another man and didn't bother to shower before climbing into bed with her supposedly blind husband. On the 6th day, Damien found the final piece of evidence that broke him completely. Elena had left her briefcase open in the bedroom. Inside was a folder marked confidential. Damien opened it with trembling hands. Inside were the divorce papers, already drafted, awaiting only her signature and filing date. The grounds were irreconcilable differences and the financial demands were staggering. Half of everything, plus ongoing spousal support, wasn't what destroyed him. Clipped to the divorce petition was a medical report from her OB/GYN. She was pregnant. 12 weeks along. Damien did the math, his brain working on autopilot even as his heart shattered. 12 weeks ago, he and Elena hadn't been intimate in over a month. He'd been recovering from the accident, and she'd been too stressed. But she'd been to Napa Valley with Christian 11 weeks ago. The child wasn't his. Elena was going to divorce him, take half his wealth, and raise another man's baby, all while he'd spent 6 months pretending to be blind to test her loyalty. She'd failed in ways he couldn't have imagined in his worst nightmares. Damien stood there, in the bedroom where they'd made love 1,000 times, where he'd promised to cherish her forever, where she'd promised the same, and he made his final decision. Tomorrow night. He would end this tomorrow night. He called Marcus. Set it up. Tomorrow evening, here at the penthouse. Tell her I need to discuss something important about my medical treatment. Make sure Christian is with her. I want them both here. What are you planning? Marcus asked carefully. Damien's smile was cold and humorless. I'm planning to see. Damien prepared carefully. He'd removed his dark glasses for the first time in 6 months. Dressed in one of his Tom Ford suits, the one Elena had always loved. He'd had Martha set up a full bar in the living room and arranged the furniture specifically for maximum dramatic impact. He stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan, his back to the door, as he heard Elena and Christian arrive. Damien. Elena's voice was tentative, slightly nervous. Martha said you wanted to see us? Is everything okay with your treatment? Damien didn't turn around. His hands were clenched behind his back, steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. My treatment. Yes, let's talk about that. He heard them move into the room. Heard Elena's sharp intake of breath. Damien, why aren't you wearing your glasses? And where's your cane? This was it. The moment he'd been building toward for 6 months. The moment that would end everything. Damien turned slowly, deliberately, to face them. His grey eyes, clear, seeing, and full of terrible knowledge, locked onto Elena's face. Because, he said, his voice deadly calm, I don't need them. The colour drained from Elena's face. Christian took an instinctive step forward, protective of her, and that small gesture told Damien everything. What? What are you saying? Elena whispered, horror dawning in her eyes. Damien walked toward them, every step measured and controlled. He moved with the easy confidence of a man who could see perfectly, who had always been able to see, who had watched everything. I'm saying I can see, Elena. I've always been able to see. No. The word came out as a broken exhale. The optic nerve damage healed within a few weeks of the accident. But Dr. Blake suggested I continue the performance. To test you. To see if you were the woman I thought you married, or if you were someone else entirely. He stopped a few feet from them, and his expression was terrible in its controlled fury. And you showed me exactly who you are. Elena's legs seemed to give out. She grabbed the back of a chair for support, her face a mask of shock and growing horror. Damien, please, let me explain. Explain what? His voice rose slightly, the first crack in his control. Explain how you've been fucking my assistant for the past 5 months? Explain how you did it in our guest bedroom while I sat in my study? Explain how you carry his child while sleeping in my bed? He walked to the bar and picked up the thick folder Marcus had prepared. He threw it onto the coffee table between them. Photographs spilled out like accusations. Elena and Christian kissing outside hotels, holding hands at restaurants. I loved you more than I've ever loved anything. You were my whole world. My reason for living. And you destroyed that. For what? Because I worked too much? Because I wasn't available enough? Yes. Elena suddenly screamed, her own anger emerging through the tears. Yes, Damien. You were never there. I was lonely. I was dying in this marriage. Christian made me feel alive again. So talk to me. Damien roared back. Tell me you're unhappy. Suggest counseling. Hell, ask for a divorce. But don't cheat. Don't lie. Don't carry another man's child while playing devoted wife. You don't understand. Then make me understand. Damien demanded. Make me understand how the woman who cried when I proposed could do this. Make me understand how you could betray every promise we made. Elena looked up at him, her face destroyed, and said the words that ended everything. I don't love you anymore. The silence that followed was absolute. Those 5 words hung in the air like poison, killing whatever small part of Damien had still hoped this could be fixed. He nodded slowly, something dying in his eyes. Okay, he said quietly. Okay. Thank you for your honesty. He walked to the door and opened it. Marcus Chen stood waiting with 2 security guards and a process server. Elena Cross, you're being served with divorce papers, the server said, handing her the folder. Christian Wolf, you're being served with termination of employment and a cease and desist order preventing you from coming within 500 feet of any Cross property or business. You can't, Christian started. He can, and he is, Marcus He pulled out the divorce papers. You were going to divorce me anyway. Take half of everything. While I sat here, blind and trusting, you were planning to destroy me and walk away rich. Damien, it's not. Don't. The word exploded from him, 6 months of contained fury finally breaking free. Don't you dare lie to me anymore. I've watched you. I've seen everything. Every touch, every kiss, every time you came home smelling like him. Every time you whispered I love you while planning your escape. The room fell silent except for Elena sobbing. Christian finally spoke, his voice careful. Damien, I know this looks. You don't get to speak, Damien cut him off with ice in his voice. You don't get to say a single word. You were my employee. In my home. With my wife. You have no voice here. He turned back to Elena, and now the pain was visible beneath the anger. I gave you everything, he said, and his voice cracked. Everything. Elena. My heart, my trust, my name, my life. I changed everything for you. I fell so completely in love with you that I couldn't imagine existing without you. I know, she whispered. Damien, I'm so sorry. You're sorry you got caught, he said flatly. If I'd actually been blind, you'd have divorced me, taken my money, and raised his baby while letting me believe you'd loved me. You would have let me live in a lie forever. Elena's face crumpled, because they both knew it was true. I loved you, Damien said, and each word was a knife to his own heart. God help me, I loved you more than I've ever... Marcus interjected smoothly. Everything you've done is documented and will be public record. I suggest you get a very good lawyer, Mr. Wolf. Elena stared at the divorce papers in her shaking hands. Damien, please, please, can we talk about this? I made mistakes, terrible mistakes, but we can fix this. Fix this. Damien looked at her with something like pity. Elena, you're pregnant with another man's child. There's no fixing that. Even if I could forgive everything else, and I can't, I could never look at you carrying his baby and pretend to be okay with it. Then I'll... Elena's voice became desperate, frantic. I'll terminate the pregnancy. We'll start over. Please, Damien, please don't throw away our marriage. I'm not throwing it away, Damien said, and his voice was empty now, drained of all emotion. You already did. The moment you let him touch you. The moment you lied to my face while planning your escape. The moment you chose your loneliness over your vows. But I love you. Elena cried, reaching for him. I know I hurt you, but I do love you, and we can. You don't love me, Damien said flatly, stepping back from her reaching hands. You love what I represent. The money, the security, the lifestyle. But me. The man. You stopped loving him months ago. Maybe years ago. You just didn't want to give up the benefits. That's not true. Isn't it? Damien pulled out his phone and began playing an audio recording. Elena's voice filled the room. I can't walk away with nothing after what I've given up for him. Elena's face went white as she heard her own words played back to her. You weren't planning to fix our marriage, Damien continued relentlessly. You were planning to cash out. And you were going to use my supposed blindness to do it, because you thought I'd never know the truth. He gestured to the security guards. Escort them out. Elena, you have 48 hours to collect your personal belongings. Everything else is frozen pending divorce proceedings. Where am I supposed to go? Elena asked, and there was genuine fear in her voice now. Damien's expression didn't change. I don't know. Maybe Christian can help you figure that out. After all, he's the father of your child. That makes him your problem, not me. As security moved to escort them out, Elena made one final desperate attempt. She broke free and ran to Damien, grabbing his hands, her tears falling on his skin just like they had the night of his accident. Damien, please, she sobbed. Please don't do this. I know I betrayed you. I know I broke your trust, but somewhere inside you still love me. I can see it in your eyes. Please, give me a chance to make this right. Damien looked down at her, this woman he'd loved so completely, who destroyed him, and felt something break inside his chest. Because she was right. God help him, somewhere beneath the rage and betrayal and devastation, he did still love her. And that made it hurt even more. You want to know the truly tragic thing? He said softly, gently pulling his hands from hers. Part of me probably will always love you. The you I thought you were. The woman in the rain who cared more about sick children than getting wet. The woman who cried when I proposed. The woman who promised to love me in sickness and in health. His voice hardened. But that woman doesn't exist. She was a fantasy. A lie. And I won't waste another second of my life loving a ghost. Elena's scream of anguish echoed through the penthouse as security finally pulled her away and toward the elevator. Christian followed silently, his face pale with shock. The elevator doors closed on Elena's desperate sobs, and then there was only silence. Damien stood alone in his penthouse, surrounded by the ruins of his marriage, the evidence of betrayal scattered across his coffee table, and he felt nothing. Just a vast, empty hollowness where his heart used to be. Marcus approached carefully. You okay? No, Damien admitted. But I will be. Eventually. What you did took incredible strength, Marcus said. Most people wouldn't have had the courage to see it through. Courage? Damien laughed bitterly. I pretended to be blind for 6 months while my wife destroyed our marriage. That's not courage, Marcus. That's... He trailed off, unable to find the words. Self-preservation, Marcus finished gently. You needed to know the truth. Now you do. Damien walked to the windows and looked out at Manhattan glittering beneath him. Millions of lights, millions of lives, the city that never sleeps. Somewhere out there, Elena was crying over what she'd lost. Christian was probably panicking about his ruined career. And Damien was free. Free from the lies. Free from the doubt. Free from a marriage that had died months ago, even if he'd been too blind, literally and figuratively, to see it. Pour me a drink, Marcus, Damien said quietly. And then I need you to do something for me. Anything. Find out everything you can about Elena and Christian. Their plans, where they're going, what they're doing. I want to know if they stay together or if this was all a fantasy that crumbles now that it's real. He turned from the window, his grey eyes hard. And I want to make sure she never gets a penny more than what's in that settlement. Not from me, not from my companies, not from anything with the Cross name on it. Consider it done. After Marcus left, Damien poured himself a scotch, expensive, smooth, and completely unable to fill the void inside him. He looked around the penthouse that had been his and Elena's home, seeing it with new eyes. It was just a space. Beautiful, expensive, luxurious, but empty. Every corner held memories now poisoned by knowledge. The guest bedroom where she'd betrayed him. The study where he'd listened to her lies. the bed where she'd whispered "I love you" while planning his destruction. He couldn't live here anymore. "Martha," he called. The nurse appeared in the doorway. "Yes, Mr. Cross." "Pack my things. I'm staying at the Cross Imperial until I find a new place. This penthouse," he looked around one last time, "put it on the market." "Of course, sir." Damien took one last look at the space where his marriage had died, raised his glass in a bitter toast to the ghost of his former happiness, and walked out the door. 3 days later, Damien sat in his lawyer's office reviewing the preliminary divorce proceedings. Everything was going exactly as planned. The evidence was ironclad. Elena's lawyers were advising her to settle quickly, and the whole nightmare would soon be over. Then Marcus's phone buzzed with a message. He read it, and his expression changed. "What?" Damien asked. "It's, you should see this." Marcus turned his laptop around. On the screen was a social media post from one of Elena's friends, public, visible to anyone. It was a photo of Elena, clearly distressed, with a long caption. "My heart breaks for my dear friend Elena, whose husband has cruelly abandoned her during her pregnancy. After his accident left him changed and cold, he's decided he doesn't want to be a father and is divorcing her while she's carrying his child. The man she's been caring for through his disability has betrayed her in the worst way. Please send love and support during this difficult time. #pregnant and alone #betrayed wife #single mom strength." Damien stared at the post, reading it twice to make sure he understood correctly. Elena was claiming the baby was his. She was painting herself as the victim, the devoted wife abandoned by her cold, disabled husband. She was rewriting history, making him the villain. "She's lying," Damien said flatly. "The paternity test will prove." "The paternity test takes time," Marcus interrupted. "And in the meantime, this narrative is already spreading. Look." He showed Damien the comments, hundreds of them, all expressing sympathy for Elena, all condemning Damien as a monster who'd abandoned his pregnant wife. Damien's hands clenched into fists. "She's playing victim. After everything she did, she's actually trying to make me look like the bad guy." "The public always sympathizes with a pregnant woman," Marcus said carefully, "especially one claiming abandonment. If she maintains this story, it could damage your reputation significantly. The business community might." "Let them," Damien interrupted. "We have proof. We have evidence. When the truth comes out." "If it comes out," Marcus corrected. "Damien, she could drag this out for months. Years, even. And every day, this narrative grows. You need to decide. Do you release the evidence now and destroy her publicly? Or do you wait for the divorce to finalize and risk your reputation in the meantime?" Damien looked at the post again, at Elena's carefully curated image of victimhood, and felt a cold fury settle over him. She wasn't done lying. Even now, caught and exposed, she was still trying to manipulate the narrative. Still trying to make herself the wrong party. "She really thinks she can win this," Damien said, almost admiringly. "Even with everything stacked against her, she thinks she can spin her way out of it." "What do you want to do?" Marcus asked. Damien thought about it. About his options. About the nuclear choice of releasing all the evidence, the photographs, the messages, the hotel receipts. It would destroy Elena completely. But it would also make their private tragedy a public spectacle. Or he could stay silent, let the divorce proceed quietly, and trust that truth would eventually prevail. He thought about the woman he'd loved, who was now so desperate to salvage something from the wreckage that she'd lie about her own child's paternity. And he made his decision. "Schedule a press conference," Damien said quietly. "Tomorrow. I'm going to tell my side of the story." "Are you sure? Once you go public." "She went public first," Damien interrupted. "She made this a public fight. Now she's going to learn why that was a mistake." Marcus nodded slowly. "This is going to get ugly." "It already is ugly," Damien replied. "But at least this way, the truth gets told." He stood and walked to the window, looking out at New York City, his city, the place where he'd built his empire and lost his heart. "Call the major outlets," he continued. "Tell them Damien Cross is ready to make a statement about his divorce. Tell them there are documents, evidence, proof. Tell them," he paused, choosing his words carefully. "Tell them the truth is not what it seems." As Marcus made the calls, Damien felt a strange calm settle over him. The worst had already happened. His marriage was over, his trust destroyed, his heart broken. What else could Elena possibly take from him? But he was about to discover that when it came to betrayal, there were always deeper levels. And Elena wasn't finished with him yet. Not by a long shot. What happens at the press conference? Will Elena's lies be exposed? Or does she have more tricks up her sleeve? And is Christian really the father of her baby? Or is there an even darker truth waiting to be revealed? Find out in My Blind Billionaire Husband's Revenge. The Truth Will Destroy Her, Part 2. Coming soon. Subscribe now.